are the crowd getting a lot of support from passing drivers? That's always quite telling.
Yes, there absolutely is. As you can hear, for those who are watching, people just keep coming past on this bridge and beeping at the nurses, which is then responded with a cheer from the nurses who are striking here. And it suggests, I guess, from the people driving past, there is public support for the nurses. The question is, will that public support remain when we've got today 70,000 cancelled procedures and operations? So, of course, that's going to have an impact on care around the country. Now, the Royal College of Nursing say that life-preserving treatment will go ahead and urgent and critical care will still happen. But of course, there's a lot of discussion and debate about what constitutes urgent care. And that's a lot of discussions that people are having at the moment. And from my understanding, that actual individual cases are going to be considered between the nurses, between the nursing union and trust to see whether they'll be going ahead. And of course, this is very much an ongoing debate and concern over nurses' pay. The government say what they're requesting, a 19% pay rise, is just simply not affordable, that it would amount to 10 billion. But the nurses are saying, well, this is more than a rise with inflation, and have criticised the independent pay review which was done earlier this year into nurses' pay that the government have taken on, which was to give nurses a pay rise of £1,400. But that crucially was done in February, when it was a very different economic climate, when inflation was nowhere near as high as it is now. So many of them have criticised that and say that 1,400 simply is not enough in this economic climate, and that's why they're asking for a pay rise of 19%, which many will say is far too much.
OK, thank you, Alice. Alice Porter, down there in London. Alice, have you got to speak to many of the nurses there this morning? Do they... What is the mood like? Is this they look quite buoyant and quite jovial down there, but I know that when you speak to them, they're quite reluctant to be taking this action. They feel like this is the last straw, don't they?
They really do. I think a lot of people I've spoken to on the picket line have said to me that they just keep saying, we're so sorry we've had to do this. And I think that is something we have to really re-emphasise. This is the first time for the whole of the UK that the NHS nurses have gone on strike. They have before, specifically in Northern Ireland, but not for the whole of the NHS. And I think that is something that many of them feel incredibly sorry about. But a lot of them have just said to me, we have no choice. Some of them, I mean, particularly, look, we're here in London. This is such an expensive city. I mean, I can only imagine how difficult it is paying for the cost of commuting into a hospital when you're on, say, £27,000. I know I wouldn't want to be doing it. So I think that's the difficulty for a lot of the nurses who are struggling, particularly in somewhere, an area of London financially. They feel they're forced into it. And then it becomes also a difficult situation where so many nurses, as the guest you were just speaking to before she sadly cut out, are leaving the profession. That's been exacerbated because of the pandemic. And therefore, a lot of the nurses are saying it's not safe because of the low staffing levels, but then it becomes something of a chicken and egg situation, that because there are fewer staff, the ones who are still here do feel unsafe staying in the NHS.